Welcome to Rubin on Point, a podcast about cancer, resilience, and being human. I'm Dr. Dan Rubin, and together we'll uncover the true power of resilience, the strength to recover, adapt, and thrive through life's toughest challenges. Each episode will bring bold ideas, transformative practices, and inspiring stories that redefine what health, healing, and what the human spirit can achieve. And you're going to meet some really cool people along the way. If you're ready to turn obstacles into opportunities and live with greater purpose and courage, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Your journey to resilience begins now. This is Rubin on Point. This is a podcast about cancer, about human resilience, and mostly about just being human. And today we are talking with Miss Danet Peterson, somebody that I've known for several years. We're going to hear her resilient journey, everything that she's doing in the world of oncology. We're going to hear about her podcast, about the 5Ks that her group supports and that we participate in as an office. And this is a patient perspectives podcast, and I'm just looking so forward to talking to you on this level.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here. And you have your own podcast. And so let's talk about that, how you got into it. Then let's kind of get into your oncology journey. But tell us about it. What's your podcast?
Technically, I have two podcasts.
Yeah.
One of them is organizational focused, and the other is my personal one that I started way before I even had a cancer diagnosis.
Okay.
So early 2020, everything was happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was doing some life coaching, and I decided that I was done waiting for the right time to start a podcast and to level up in the network marketing group that I was a part of, and to be to a certain point. I was done waiting to arrive, and I was just going to start doing.
What were you doing?
I did Beachbody coaching for a pretty long time, so lifestyle, personal development, and a lot
This
of
is P90X type
fitness.
stuff?
Yeah, P90X, 21 Day Fix was my kind of exposure to the Beachbody world, and I loved it. It was really good, but in some ways, retrospectively, I've learned that some of the ways that I kind of managed my life maybe weren't the healthiest. Even though I was striving for health, right? I was promoting that I was this healthy person and that I was posting on social media, some of the added pressures of being a coach just didn't end up fitting well with
Did
who
you
I
know
was
at
as a
the
person.
time that you were saying you were healthy that you actually weren't, or was this in retrospect?
I felt good.
Okay.
I felt good. I felt good mentally and emotionally. It was just more in retrospect that I came to this point of realizing there was some level of my worth is attached to my success.
Okay.
And I had to learn to let go of that. And that wasn't the network marketing company's fault. That was really just my self-development as a person. But part of being a coach, maybe the biggest gift of that was that I did so much personal growth, and I did life coaching. I did, group coaching. I listened to tons of podcasts. And so I learned a lot about myself as a person, but also about kind of just interacting with other people. But I think for the most part, it was just me. And it was learning to kind of let go of my own limiting beliefs. So starting my own podcast, it's called the Resilient Joy Podcast. And
Resilient? I didn't even know that one.
It's called the Resilient Joy Podcast. And I started it myself. And it currently is co-hosted by myself and my good friend she lives in Costa Rica now, but she's a good friend of mine. We have a crazy story. You can listen to it on the podcast. But she and I started talking together because we decided, let's just keep this going, but let's do it on a discussive basis instead of me just talking to someone else.
So is the podcast just you two talking, or do you have guests?
We talk about, we haven't really been very regular about talking just with everything that I've had going on recently, and she too, but we're just doing it because we like talking. We Marco Polo each other.
Yes, you do.
we Marco Polo each other all the time, and we talk about, our lives. We talk about cancer. We talk about our kids. And we just decided, we
it's
have
a human
such
interest.
Good discussion. Let's just keep talking.
Yeah. So your podcast is about, it's the Resilient Joy Podcast.
We talk about developing resilience and how that's a process.
How did I not know this?
It's almost like a skill. Yeah. No, I don't talk a ton about that one just because I don't actively promote it a whole lot. It's more just kind of a personal
Do you feel
endeavor.
resilient?
But I feel like that's the kind of the challenge, though, is that I think that sometimes we have this perception that resilience is something that you arrive at. And I believe resilience is an ongoing skill. It's an ongoing framework of mind that you have to kind of tap into each time. And ultimately, it's not something that you do and you're just done doing it. It kind of is continually evolving with your life.
So you have to build resilience and maintain resilience.
Yeah, you have to maintain it.
And sometimes it goes down.
Muscles.
Does it ebb and flow?
Yeah, I would say that there's times that I feel more resilient than others. My friend Kenzie, though, is really good at explaining that, you don't feel resilient right now, but you are being resilient. You're
Mhm.
just kind of maybe in the depths of, I call it the
Why
pit of
then?
despair.
Yeah, the pit of despair. So back then, before you were diagnosed or carried this diagnosis, whatever we want to say with cancer, why did you choose to talk about resilience? Why then? Because that's kind of OG.
Yeah, it was really a big shift for me as a person. Like in coaching,
Mm-hmm.
I had done so much personal development, right? And I had spent probably about 7-ish years, basically from the time my son was a year old and he's now 11. But I spent a lot of time kind of trying to chase after something, right? Chasing success, chasing worthiness, trying to like get to a point where I could say like, oh, I've done it and now I'm here and I don't have to
How
like
old
keep
were
doing
you?
that. At the time that I started coaching, I was 23-ish,
Okay.
around 23. And so, I mean, it's been a while, but I had this point where, I had to choose a team name. And at the time I chose Joy Seekers. And it was kind of this pursuit of like joy and this idea that I was trying to find the good things that were happening, even though there were challenging things that were happening in life.
Okay.
And it took really until I would say 2020 for me to really like tap into the idea that, you know what, this isn't actually about finding anything. Like this is about tapping into a skill set and developing the confidence to go through hard things and to just kind of take the learning experiences that I have from 10 years ago and apply that to what I'm going through today, even though they're not the same experience. And I kind of landed on this idea that like resilience isn't it's not something that you do just once. It's really it's kind of a set of choices. And I decided that maybe resilience isn't like being a warrior or being so strong. Like maybe resilience is choosing to get back up even when life knocks you down.
I think that's beautiful. And I think being in your early 20s and thinking about resilience at that point and thinking about your self-worth, I mean, I think it's really important. And it's kind of original, at
Thank
that
you.
time. Yeah. What's your other podcast?
So the other podcast I actually started in 2021, or I continued. It's called the I Believe podcast.
Yeah. EYE.
Yes, I as in eyeball, because
Yeah.
I was diagnosed with an eye cancer in 2020. And the nonprofit that I work for, called Ocular, they had a strong desire to build like a library of resources for patients. And I came in 2021 originally as a social media manager, and I was just basically vulnerably sharing my story across social media. And they saw that and they decided, hey, maybe this person could take over our social media, and like she's real, she's authentic, people like they can relate with her. And so I took that on. And then the podcast kind of naturally evolved from that because I wanted to bring patients on and like tell them have them tell their stories.
Yeah.
And anyway,
How big is Ocular?
it's pretty small, honestly. Like we have technically, I think, just a few, like a handful of employees, and there's a few board members. We do have, various different periods of time where we've got volunteers from different places or organizations that kind of
Is it
chip in.
across the country?
Yeah, we do cover, like we technically are a United States-based nonprofit, but we do offer, resources to people with ocular melanoma across the world.
So no pun intended, but the focus is ocular melanoma.
Yeah, the focus is absolutely ocular melanoma, which is the cancer that I was diagnosed with in the summer of 2020.
So what did you know that something was wrong? Tell me about the diagnosis?
So I had my last baby in October of 2019, and kind of had a phase of going kind of inside myself and just kind of stepping out of society and not really living with the pressures of posting anything or any of that on social media, just to recover and have time with my littlest baby. And then in January, my vision started kind of being a little wonky, and I really kind of attributed it to postpartum, like hormonal shifts, things like that. And so I went into my eye doctor, just telling him like, okay, my glasses are not helping very much on my right side. Can you just check and see if we need to change the prescription? And at the time she did like a full diagnostic exam. We did, dilating the eyes, like all those things. And she was like, hey, like if we change the prescription, here's what we changed it to. Let's try it and just see. And I wore contacts also at the time. I didn't really wear glasses. And so I tried the contacts, didn't feel like the vision change was, improving enough. And so I just kind of left it be.
But she didn't do a fundoscopy.
She didn't,
Okay.
she didn't do any kind of imaging, but we did do just, like a dilated exam where she dilated my eyes and she looked, and she didn't see anything out of the ordinary. So July 2020 is when I started having some really significant eye changes.
Was it scary?
I mean, yeah, like I had an MRI that I was
Mhm.
waiting for like some girl doctor stuff.
Mhm.
And I got the results of that MRI. We were at a cabin, like kind of out of my normal routine, all
Mhm.
that things, all those things. And I woke up literally the next morning, put my contact in, and in my right eye, the contact, like I thought I had dropped it because I couldn't see. Like I wasn't like black, but it was definitely more blurry than it normally is. And it
Mhm.
felt like, okay, did I drop my contact? And then I'm like
Yeah.
feeling around,
Yeah.
like I can see it there. It's not on the
Wow.
floor. So I drastically lost vision literally overnight.
Wow.
In my right eye. And by the end of the week, I was into my regular optometrist, who's been my optometrist basically since childhood.
Mhm.
And she told me that I had a massive retina detachment that she needed to send me to a specialist for. That was a Friday. And by the end of that Friday afternoon, I was told I had a tumor in my eye.
Oh, so you got into the specialist that day?
I got into a specialist, a retina
Okay.
specialist.
Yeah.
He didn't officially diagnose me with ocular melanoma. He did a few of the
But it was a
imaging, the
mass,
fundus,
they
but
saw.
he just said
Yeah.
there is a tumor in your eye. I suspect that it's ocular melanoma, but I have to send you somewhere else to get the rest of the story.
And then? What happened in your psyche, in your spirit, in your body, right when you heard that?
I mean, honestly, it was really alarming and really surprising. It was very shocking because this is a diagnosis most people don't know about until
Yeah.
you meet someone like me who
Yeah.
has ocular melanoma. And so I was mostly just in shock, especially because I went in with the expectation that I was going to walk out that afternoon with some kind of a retina, fixing surgery, some
Yeah.
kind of way to repair the retina.
Right.
And that
So
was
all
the,
of a sudden somebody says you
and then
have
somebody
cancer.
says cancer, and it's like,
Yeah.
excuse me,
In
like
your head.
I'm
In your-
alone.
yeah.
Like for one, just because I mean, you guys remember like
Mhm.
COVID, everybody was really isolated,
Yeah.
lots of masking. You couldn't really have support people with
Yeah.
you in
Yeah.
doctor's appointments, and
How
so
crazy is
I
that?
got this information alone with a doctor.
Yeah.
My mom was in the waiting room. My husband was at home with our kids,
Yeah.
and it was
So your
it was
kids are
horribly
how
jarring.
old at this time?
I was 28.
And how old were your kids?
My kids, my youngest was 9 months old, so she was still breastfeeding, and I had I want to say a kindergarten going into first grader, and like a preschooler.
And so what went through your head right at that diagnostic time when you're alone?
So that first day, like on the Friday that he told me, hey, there's a tumor in your eye, and then he proceeded to tell me, don't Google.
Yeah.
Like,
Did
you're
you?
going to go the weekend, and I need you to know that you're going to see this next doctor next Tuesday, but don't Google anything over the weekend. And I made it all the way until about Sunday, like late afternoon. And
So it
then
was stressful
I
for you.
caved.
Yeah.
It was definitely stressful.
Okay.
It was really vulnerable and obviously just a huge shock. Like nobody knew what it meant. And because we were actively trying to, like at least me, I was trying to stay off of Google. Until I did Google it, it was like I had no idea the gravity of the situation.
So looking back today, because here we are more than about 5 years later.
Almost 5 years.
Should you have Googled?
I mean, I did eventually Google, and I would say that at least for my personality type and how I have been able to manage the information, as I've had this ongoing diagnosis to deal with, I do think that I do better with the information as opposed to the unknown kind of hanging over my head. I would rather have an answer and be
Okay.
able to like deal with it, take action, make some decisions than to sit in that limbo space.
Did you go too deep down a hole and think about metastatic disease at that time?
I think that for the most part, it was more just learning that like, oh, this is not just like a one and done kind of a thing. And I didn't Google very long. Like I
Okay.
didn't get a whole lot of
You just
information.
wanted something.
But I got some information, and then it was like, whoa, that's I
So,
don't like how that sounds.
I'm guessing that the amount of stress you were undergoing by not Googling might have been relieved by actually Googling.
Yeah, it was
You were
actually
yeah.
somewhat relieved. And
Yeah.
then I was like, okay, I can solidly say I don't want more of that information
Yeah.
yet. So let's wait. Like innocent
for
until
you.
proven guilty was kind of my mindset.
So melanoma in your eye,
Mhm.
it's a strange concept.
It is very weird.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always come from, same as skin melanoma. It
Mhm.
doesn't always originate because you have, say, a freckle or a
Right.
mole. It can. And so that's, if you talk to an eye doctor, like an ophthalmologist, which, newsflash, like everybody should get an eye exam with an ophthalmologist, comprehensive eye exam, all the things. But they will
You mean because they
check.
could catch people
They,
early?
they will
or-
check for things like a nevus is what they
Mhm.
call it. A nevus is what you call a mole or a
Mhm.
freckle on the eye.
Mm.
And that nevus, most of the time, doesn't change. Like really, most of the time it doesn't. But if you do have a nevus, which a lot of people do, it's important to have it watched,
Yeah.
just on the off chance that it does start to change. Because in the case of ocular melanoma, if you do have something that's found when it's really small, it's much more treatable. And as a whole, patients have a much better prognosis. They don't tend to have to deal with metastatic disease. They just get to live with, the unknown and the uncertainty, but it's, it's definitely a different ballgame if it's found earlier. In my case, the tumor was massive.
In your eye.
In my eye. It filled about half the volume of the eyeball.
Let's get back to that public service announcement you just gave. You had been under the care of somebody, since childhood, but didn't go to an ophthalmologist. You were going to an optometrist.
I did go to an optometrist.
Your warning is to people, or your piece of advice is to people who even
it's a little nuanced, right? Okay. Because an optometrist can have the skills and the equipment to scan, and they do have very extensive knowledge of the retina and all of those things. But most of the time, because of how private practice with ophthalmology and optometry works, they haven't ever even seen an ocular melanoma. And so I was my doctor's first exposure to ocular melanoma in her entire career.
Your optometrist.
My optometrist. Okay. So she's the one that I've seen for glasses and contacts.
Right.
She also evaluates the general health of my eye. But if you have a nevus and you know you have a nevus, you should be seen by a retina specialist. It's no longer okay to just be seen by an ophthalmologist or an optometrist, in my opinion. You need to be monitored by someone who actually is more familiar with retina disease.
I'm going to agree with you here, because I developed an eye condition. It was called serous chorioretinopathy.
Goodness.
And I was being followed. It was fluid under your eye, and it was due to stress, and commonly happens in attorneys and doctors and surgeons and pilots, and some are, the idea was, you follow it, and if it doesn't resolve, then you need some type of treatment. But mine wasn't resolving. It was kind of getting there. But when I finally went and saw a retinologist, despite my mom saying, you should see a retinal specialist, but I was, trusting my optometrist, who said, you don't need it. Well, I ended up really needing it, and I needed treatment. And now I have some permanent damage in my eye that just, I still believe I'm going to get better and it's going to go away. But I get it. When there's a retinal condition, you do need to go see a retinal specialist.
And so, to give her credit, she did refer me immediately as soon as she knew there was a retina issue.
Absolutely.
And just for my specific story, because of where my tumor was located, I'm going to hand these to you.
Okay.
We'll talk about those later.
We will talk about these in a little bit, because these are Dharma doctors.
But if you think about the shape of the eye and where it fits in the face, my tumor was located in the front nasal corner of my eyeball.
Wow, so it was pushing it that way.
Yes, so it was, but it wasn't even, it was basically like if you have the corner of your eye, and like sometimes, you get those red veins. And I had a very distinctive red vein, and they call it a sentinel vein. And the sentinel vein is basically like, it's a sign that there's something growing back there that isn't just normal
because it didn't go
eye
away.
Stress. It didn't go away, And it kept getting progressively worse. So it was kind of spidering out from this like inner corner. But because it was located in the front of the eye, there is a window of space that when you're having a regular dilated eye exam, or even an OCT, like where you have the retina imaging done, there is a window of that space of the full 360 of the eye that you can't actually capture in an image without something like an ultrasound. So in my case, even though I advocate for getting the eye exams, all the things, I had eye exams every year of my life.
Yeah, you had
and
OCT
they
too.
Still, I don't think I never had the imaging.
Okay.
And there's just no way to know for sure if my tumor could have been diagnosed earlier had I had the imaging as well as the dilated eye exam. My ocular oncologist says maybe. My optometrist says, I don't know how to call that. Like we can't say, like, all I can do is say that I did do the best that I could with the knowledge that I had. So I don't blame her. I think I spent some period of like the initial time feeling like kind of resentful of like, well, how could you miss this? But at the front of the eye is a much harder location to diagnose until it like drastically affects something like blossoming. Like think of it like a mushroom or like a root under the carpet. And it's like the retina is pushing the tumor down until the tumor builds up pressure and then it bursts through.
Yeah.
So that's kind of theoretically what they think happened with mine, is that eventually it just kind of blossomed, broke the retina, which led to blurry vision. And anyway, so that's all the technical stuff, but I've learned all of this, in hindsight.
So looking back, we were talking about the news and how you reacted that day. There was Neil Love with Breast Cancer Update years ago. I mean, we're talking probably about 2003, 2004, more than 20 years ago, did what's called a Patient Perspectives Project and talked to women about what their first reactions were or how they felt instantly upon diagnosis. So I thought that was brilliant. And so I've asked my guests,
Yeah.
who have been patients. So that's why I asked you
Yeah.
that.
So, I mean, the next week is when I got the official diagnosis, like early August, from a doctor who said, yeah, this is ocular melanoma. This is what that means. And really at the time, the main focus was on my eye, right? And so for the most part, they actually weren't talking a whole lot about things like metastatic disease or any of that. That hadn't even really come up.
Okay.
But we were really heavily focused on this is a large tumor in your eye, and they did tell me if this is not treated, it will kill you.
And
like
what
that
was your primary treatment to be?
The primary treatment was something called brachytherapy. It's a piece of metal with radioactive seeds that they strap to your eye for a duration of time. In my case, it was a week, and they leave it there to treat the tumor and kill it, and then they take it off. And just for ocular melanoma, doctors are really good at containing the disease that's in the eye. The problem is what happened while the tumor was undiagnosed. The micrometastatic potential for spread, all of those different things. And in my case, because the tumor was much larger, and I ended up with a biopsy that said it was called a class 2, which is like basically, it's not stage 4, but it's like the furthest into the staging that they can go that says this is the most aggressive tumor type. And
so there's a difference between staging and grading. And so having a class 2, they looked at the cells of the melanoma, the primary lesion. They were able to say, like, this looks pretty aggressive. There's a chance of metastatic disease.
Yeah.
And you said micrometastatic, meaning when you get your surveillance scans, they didn't necessarily see anything, but there was a chance that there were cells already out.
Yeah, there was a chance, and like most of the research points to the fact that if you do develop metastatic disease within 2 to 5 years of your primary eye diagnosis, so 2020 was when I was diagnosed, and if you do develop metastatic disease, really at any point in the future, that it probably was already there. Like it was already seeded in your body, so to speak, and it was just kind of hanging out, like just dormant.
Once you get the primary out, you de facto, if they weren't there before, you can't develop it later.
So it had to have been there before, and so they estimate that it could have been there, 2 to 5 years before my eye was ever even diagnosed.
Got it.
So that's that's been another thing to grapple with. The more information that I've gained, like it's kind of a double-edged sword, so to speak. But at the time that I got this original diagnosis, I really had to kind of like compartmentalize everything, right? I didn't have time to really sit with a whole lot of things. And after that first appointment, I ended up getting a second opinion, and that doctor actually was the one who she told me, about the biopsy. She told me about kind of the process of how we could do this treatment. And I ended up sticking with her as my oncologist of choice because I felt better connected with her. She's also a mom, and I had little kids.
Okay.
I felt like I was able to kind of absorb the news differently with her. And she also really encouraged me to not pay too much attention to the numbers. She was the first doctor.
Which numbers?
Just the statistics.
Statistics.
Yeah, the statistics. She told me, you can get the biopsy, you can not, but at the end of the day, you're not a statistic. And that stuck with me. That stuck with me throughout everything. Just because
it helped pull you through, gave you resilience.
It's helped me to approach this from a mindset of like, okay, just because it's happened to somebody else doesn't mean it has to happen to me.
What's happened to you? The metastatic disease?
Just because metastatic disease happened to somebody else doesn't mean it has to be my story. And if it does happen, doesn't mean it is going to be the end of my story because of it. And so it's just been this conscious choice, right? To have the difficult news and to then again, like get back up and just keep showing up.
That's your resilience, which is where you came from.
And it's a skill, right? That I've developed through other experiences in life that there was actually, within the week of getting diagnosed, there was a gentleman who, he only knew me through social media, and I've since talked to him a lot, but he's a previous addict, and he now is a therapist, and he works specifically with people with alcohol addiction, but he follows my story, I follow his, and he told me within about the first probably couple days that I got diagnosed, he just said, I know this is really hard. Like I can see that it's really hard right now for you to be going through getting this news and losing your sight, all of these things. But he said, I just want to just phrase, I want to pose something to you, and you can take it or leave it. But he basically just said, what if all of this is happening right now? And what if you spent the last 7 years preparing for it? And that struck me as just this really unique way, just a unique perspective, right? It was way more empowering to look at what I was going through in the moment and to go, okay, this is new, right? But I do have the skills because I built them when I had a miscarriage. I built them when I transitioned out of the faith that I grew up in. I built them when my marriage felt like it was, going crazy. Like I built them in other experiences. When I had postpartum depression, like all of those things that I've gone through to this point have led me up to this point, and they have been kind of like training, so to speak.
I mean, this is all incredible, and you literally seem to have prepared yourself. So what your friend said to you really resonated with you then,
Yeah.
and helped with the skill that you had developed. So then, when did you first get diagnosed with metastatic disease?
So that was about 2 years later.
Okay.
So like we mentioned before,
Yeah.
like we talked about the biopsy, I had a class 2 diagnosis. And so it was pretty, my doctors basically followed me as if they expected there was probably something already there.
Okay.
So I had scans every 3 months for 2 years. And the goal was kind of like, let's get to the 2-year mark. And if you're still clear, then we'll move out to like every 4 months, maybe every 6. And so that 2-year mark was really kind of like leading up to that year, that summer was really hard, honestly. Like emotionally, it felt harder to deal with coming up on the 2-year anniversary of my diagnosis, like emotionally, mentally. And keep in mind, this whole last 2 years, I had spent lots of time investing in therapy and in just like good self-care and like all of those kinds of things. I did EMDR like around my original diagnosis because eye pain was horrific and that was a hard thing to go through. And I also lost my sight. I adjusted, I did all these, I really overcame a lot of obstacles in that first 2 years. But leading up to that 2 years was really challenging because that was the turning point that my doctors would decide, oh, do we keep watching you as frequently or do we scale back?
Yeah.
And that summer I ended up kind of unexplainably getting sick. And I had like horrible stomach pain. And it took really months to really determine that this was really more because of anxiety. And it was just my body's response to like almost like acid reflux or something. But with this cancer, the most common organ that it can go to if it is gonna, have metastatic spread is the liver. And if you, know where the liver is in your body, like this is where I would feel stomach pain. And so I had just a really weird weekend. I ended up in the ER. They tested my liver enzymes, all those things happened. And the long, or the short story is that by the end of that week, I had scans because my oncologist understood that I was worried and I was extra, extra fearful.
Was this before the 3-month mark?
It was like a month early, yeah. Okay. And but my ER visit they had done an ultrasound of my liver because, I'm saying I've got stomach pain, it won't go away. They did my liver enzymes and those were elevated. And so because my liver enzymes were elevated, I was super worried. Yeah. So my oncologist was like, you know what, we'll just do scans early, it's fine. And so we did the scans and he came back with, actually, there is a spot. Yeah. And it was just one, and it was really small. And that was about August of 2022 till like early October of 2022, I was kind of in limbo because of the location of this supposed, like it was basically like we think it's a tumor, but 5 months or 3 months ago in May, it was still the same size. So maybe it's not a problem. Maybe it's okay. And so I really spent this couple of months in limbo waiting to have scans again. And the scans were going to be to determine, is it growing or is it not? Because we couldn't justify doing a biopsy at the time if we couldn't see growth.
That must have been a really tough period.
So it was really hard. Yeah, like grappling with that took a lot of my energy. And the only good thing I would say, and I don't want to say the only good thing, but like one of the things that I kind of shifted my focus to because that was out of my control. And I like since 2020 when...
Wait, what do you mean it was out of your control?
Like I couldn't control if the tumor was going to grow or not on a certain timeline. And I also couldn't control that my doctors and, every doctor that I'm talking to who could do a biopsy is telling me, nah, that one's really, really small. It's really high up in your liver. We can't access that in a non-invasive way. And so, conventional medicine said, do no harm. We have to watch and wait. And that was outside of my control. I couldn't change that outcome. But what I could do is I could focus on something else. And I decided, just because of where I had been kind of feeling led to, I had come across a woman in my community who I found out she was, I think at the time, almost 3 years into her metastatic journey with ocular melanoma. But she also exclusively did the metabolic approach to cancer. She had not had any conventional treatment whatsoever. So I interviewed her for the I Believe podcast, and I learned more about her story and her history. I took the time that summer, like as the summer ended and I got this news, I started reading. I read Radical Remission by Kelly A. Turner. And then I read parts of, and I just kind of continue to piece out when I can, like the Metabolic Approach to Cancer by Dr. Naisha Winters. And I landed on the idea that, you know what? if conventional medicine says they can't do anything for right now, then I'm going to take matters into my own hands. And I'm going to focus on things like taking care of my whole body. I'm going to take care of my emotions. I'm going to take care of, like mental well-being, all of those things. And so I focused in and kind of honed in on that. So it gave me something else to focus on, something that was in my control. So I started doing the keto diet. I started looking for a naturopath oncologist, like someone who I could work with to better understand like what's going on in my body. Like, are there any warning signs that we can work with? And just really trusting that like, okay, doesn't matter how much I can do, like what I'm going to do is going to help to some degree. Like, because I'm sure you can get that. Like, it's overwhelming to start kind of overhauling your lifestyle.
You said that, you know what, I could do this. Some people can do this much. Some people can do this much. It depends on their time, their energy, their finances, where they live. And but
it's a conscious decision. For me, it was a conscious decision. That's a hard phrase to say, but it's really a decision that it doesn't matter if I can do more, more than whatever's on my list, or if I can do everything. Like, I'm a type A person. And so I, like I mentioned too earlier, like I struggled a lot for a lot of years with this idea that my worth was attached to what I did or to my success at what I did. And so this was a period where I had to really lean into the idea that my worth wasn't attached to any of the things I was doing. My worth just was. And that I was worth pursuing taking good care of myself, but also learning and trying something different.
Do you still believe that?
I do. I think that...
You believe in yourself?
I do, yeah. I feel like I've developed a lot of confidence. But that period of time where it was so uncertain and I had no answers, right? I was just waiting.
What was home life back then?
Like that was, my kids were all in school and we were getting ready to come up on fall break. And so for the most part, it was kind of like trying to figure out how to keep this from invading my life too much, while at the same time, like taking really good care of myself and controlling what I could. Like, I don't know if you know Frozen, but Olaf says, like in the second movie, he says, we call this controlling what we can when things feel out of control. And it's when, lots of things are happening in the story. But I have loved that belief. And I feel like that's really applicable to anybody with a cancer diagnosis, is that you have to lean into what you have control over, because there's a lot of stuff you don't.
That's good advice.
And so I really did that. But I would say the other really good thing is a healthy level of denial. Because I lived in denial, like basically for that 2-month period when I was waiting for that next scan. And really even after that, they told me, like in October, it's growing. And I was like, okay, but like we don't have a biopsy yet. So until we have a biopsy that says this is uveal melanoma in my liver, I don't believe it is. And so therefore, it's not going to behave that way. And like, it was just kind of this internal like willpower of, belief. And so up until that biopsy point, which I had the scan in October and then I had to wait again. Like, I'm sure you understand the holidays get crazy.
Oh, yeah.
But I had to wait again for like 6 weeks to have a biopsy with a liver surgeon who did a fantastic job going and doing this laparoscopic surgery. But I had to wait.
Those are hard.
So hard to wait.
And so that's another thing. You couldn't control the holidays. You couldn't control that other doctor's schedule.
So that was another thing that I couldn't control. Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned home life. So I actually took off with my kids. We went, my husband was working and he thankfully works from home. But my kids had spring break or fall break. We had fall break. And so we actually went to California. We just kind of gave ourselves a break, gave ourselves some space. And I actually got the news that my tumor was, that it was growing in that period, like the beginning of that weekend. And so, of course that was really emotional. Right? It was one thing to be, there's a small spot, it's stable. It was another to be like, no, this is growing. Like it's doubled in size in 2 months. Like it was still very small and it was still alone, which was in and of itself a good thing. But it was still very scary to feel that. And to like, that was when I think the reality of what does metastatic disease mean? And I've learned, right? This is 2 years plus into my diagnosis. I know what metastatic disease means. And in ocular melanoma, there's not a whole lot. And there's a really,
what do you mean there's not a whole lot?
There's not a whole lot of treatments. Okay. There's not a whole lot of conventional treatments. There's not a whole lot of knowledge around
really doing
what
chemotherapy. You're not doing radiation
there's
therapy.
Not specific things that we know work to like provide curative care. And so it was a lot of just extra layers of uncertainty, but it became a lot more scary to look at my kids and go like, I've got like a really little family, like really little kids. And all they've known for the last couple of years has been mom has eye cancer, but now mom has cancer that is maybe, most likely like innocent until proven guilty, but most likely in my liver. And if it's in my liver, that's a higher risk to my mortality. And so that was that was like singing my kids to bed at night, like singing them a song and like crying as I'm singing the song, because I'm sitting there and what's coming up is the feeling of like, what if this is the last year I get to do this? What if this is the last birthday? And so I'm an anxious person, like you know this.
Yeah.
But I tend to.
Speaking of that,
I know we can talk about these.
Do you want these back?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I can't remember what I put them on. I think I had them on blue.
Turning these on. Come on.
They have to sync first.
Boom. You know
there we
better.
Go.
Why do you like to hold those?
So these are new, and you actually introduced me to these in my last visit with you in like mid-April, after I got the latest news of like what's new in my liver. And I was having some pretty significant like emotional distress in the office, like trying to talk to you about this upcoming potential treatment that my doctors had posed as like the best option. And you like kind of stopped me in the middle of this and you said, hold on, like go get the Dharma docs. And I was like, what? And then he hands me these and he's like, just hold these. And I'm like, okay. Yes. I'm holding these. So I start talking to you and I go from, I can't talk about this without like breaking into tears and like I can no longer like get through this information to I can talk, and it's no longer causing quite as much, emotional distress. I'm not feeling the physical symptoms. I had some level of control. Yeah. But I, have since like over the last month really been working on kind of really, honestly, it's been a little bit weird. It feels a little like deja vu, and I'm going to like kind of bring us back to my original metastatic diagnosis because as a result of not having a whole lot of control, I had to accept that I had to settle into what this was, right? I didn't have any other alternative. I could either put my head in the sand and ignore it all, which I think I did to some degree, but
what's the end result of that if you don't?
I think that if you don't come out of that, the end result is you are now a victim to your own disease, and you're too afraid of it to take action when you do need to take action.
Fear is a big part of things.
And the other flip side of that is that if you act too quickly, right? And I think this was one of our first conversations, is that you told me that conventional medicine is going to tell me I don't have time. Conventional medicine is going to say you have to move quickly. You've got to go. You've got to like do the therapy, do the blood work, do the scans, have the surgery, like all these things. And then it's going to feel like this rushed kind of a sensation. And I fought against that. But in some ways, I kind of was forced to not have it move quickly because of the surgeon and the scans and all of the waiting in between and the holidays, all of that. So it forced me to slow down. And slowing down ended up being one of the best things that I could have done for myself, because it gave me a chance to
perspective.
It gives me a chance to develop perspective. It gave me a chance to try different things and just kind of lean into different areas of holistic and metabolic cancer care that I wanted to do, and to just kind of tease that out without it feeling like, oh, I'm going to die tomorrow. Like, I think that was one of the big things, is that it can feel like, oh my gosh, you got a metastatic diagnosis. That means you're going to die. And I mean, I say that bluntly. Like, I have a funky relationship with death. We have morbid humor in my house.
Let's talk about that.
But like really, like it is something that it's helpful in some ways, because I can look at it and normalize the idea of my mortality while also accepting that like that doesn't mean that I believe or that I'm giving up on the idea that I couldn't get better or that my body can't deal with this. And so. But I really had, in that fall, like we went to the beach, all this, the new news was coming in, and I remember feeling like all the big what ifs, right? The anxious what ifs. And they were all just like spiraling. Like I was just crying, watching my kids like run in and out of the ocean. And I couldn't get to a place of peace for a minute.
Were you sad that it might not be?
It was more the possibility of like, I don't know if I'm going to get 10 more years. I don't know if I'm going to get 5.
But would you have been more sad that you couldn't see them, or that it wouldn't have been you watching them and maybe somebody else?
Honestly, this is where therapy comes in. Honestly, I can accept the idea of like my eventual, mortality. Like we all are going to die one day. That's just part of growing. It's part of getting old. The hard thing for me to accept is that my kids, my husband, my family, my friends will have to cope with me, or, cope with the idea of me being gone without me, right? That's out of my control. So that level of like needing control and like wanting to be able to be there for the people that I love, that goes away if I'm gone, right? And so that was where most of the fear has stemmed from, is this idea that like, oh my gosh, like what if I'm gone and they can't cope and they spiral and they are, not doing well, or,
So
just
that's
heaven
not
forbid, all these bad things happen.
in a way, that's not putting you first, in a sort of morbid, weird
it's
sort
kind
of
of
way.
a weird thing, right? But I ended up landing on a mantra that I kind of adopted that what do you call it, that month on the beach. And it was like, okay, like I don't know what's going to happen after all of this, right? I don't know, but I do know that I'm here today. I believe I'm going to be here tomorrow, and I'm pretty sure tomorrow's add up. Like I didn't know how many tomorrows I had, but that was something that was believable to me. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to survive this. That felt a little too much for my brain to like absorb. But this was doable, right? I could live with this. And I spent 2022, the rest of that year, and then 2023, just like leaning into the idea that like, I'm not a statistic. I'm gonna be my own statistic, really. And that I do have tomorrow. Like I've got today, I've got tomorrow. And so what that really does is that it invokes a sense of presence, right? You're focused on the here and the now. You're not so worried about the what if in the future of all the terrible things that could happen. And I mean, if you guys deal with anxiety, like that sometimes the what if is like the biggest thing that you deal with, and the what if hasn't happened yet.
Well, that's catastrophizing.
Yeah, like it's catastrophizing.
Yes,
exactly.
And that can be steamrolled. So, how's your liver?
I mean, right now it's got like a little family. It's got a little family of tumors that we don't really love. It's been through a lot in the last year.
It has been. It's been treated a couple times.
Yeah, it's been treated a total of 3 times.
And these tumors are not in the treated areas.
No, these are in, well, arguably, the tumor family that has developed is actually in the area, it's in the region close to the original site, like the original metastatic spot that was treated with microwave ablation.
Yes, you had microwave ablation, and you also had a fancy treatment called what?
Histotripsy.
Yeah, I mean, you were
early
2.
On. I had 2 treatments with histotripsy, which is basically, it's like an ablation. It's a sound wave ablation, which I've spent many years doing various different holistic approaches. Like I see you, but I also have done Reiki healing and sound healing.
So important.
I tried hypnotherapy this last month, which
So it's nowhere else in your body.
At the moment, we had a PET scan in January.
Not
and
at the moment.
Nothing.
It's nowhere else in your body.
It's nowhere else in my body. No. It's been solidly contained to my liver, which is a good thing.
It is a good thing, and there is a notion, and there is a phenomenon that it was there, and it showed up in your liver, but it had been there for years, right? And they were predicting maybe even 3 or 5 years before you were diagnosed, because cancer cells can emancipate from the original location, and the liver is a nice place for melanoma cells to settle. They like that.
Yeah,
right?
They like to set up camp.
But because it's not in your bones and it's not in your lungs, it doesn't seem to be in your lymph nodes, it's nowhere else, you've contained it. But why does it keep showing up again? And I don't want to say the word recurrence, because it's not really recurrence, it just hasn't gone away yet.
Yeah, it's almost like it's just still there.
What about, we know that the immune system plays a large role in the treatment of people with melanoma. And so for you, there is scar tissue in there from those original treatments. And then some of those cells probably just jumped over the barrier, and that scar tissue may be very difficult for the immune system to get through. And same thing with small molecules, like we're giving you, or whether it be the metabolic approach, or IV vitamin C, or ozone, or meditation, or whatever it is that you're doing. It is contained, which is what you're doing for the rest of your body, which is really important, because non-conventional approaches to treatment in the nutraceutical or naturopathic or functional realm are really good at taking care of all the rest of it.
Yeah.
What is it about that liver that it's so difficult to get that immune function into? It stumps us.
It's tricky. And I think, most of what I've learned about how the immune system works and different organs, right? Like I learned from a researcher who's also a patient that the eye is one of the most immunosuppressive organs in the body. And the eye is an organ, right? The eyes together are,
the uveal fluid is very well protected.
It's a very well protected area, because if you think about it, you get an eyelash in your eye, you get a speck of dust because there's a dust storm. If we had a strong immune response in our eye, the same way we do maybe to developing a scab on our leg, we would lose our vision really fast, because our eye would be like, nope, we're done, shut down. And so the idea, though, is that because they developed in an immunosuppressive environment, and they developed just, despite that or with that they then look for somewhere else that is immunosuppressive. And the liver is immunosuppressive.
Which is why personalized immunotherapy, which is something we wish we could, somehow get to you, and we've tried different immunotherapeutic
Yeah, like we've thought about
approaches.
different things.
We've talked about the abscopal approach. And when you look at your case in general, with you now heading towards basically your third line treatment for localized metastatic liver, in your liver melanoma, that abscopal response is probably in effect because you have not developed it anywhere else.
Yeah, and like that's huge. I think that, just to kind of make a plug about the whole mortality thing, like one of the challenging things to confront in the work that I do, and it's actually been something that I've somewhat had to like pull back a little bit from the space. Like I don't do as much with the nonprofit space and with the ocular melanoma community, not because I don't care for the people, but because I have to care for myself, right? And that right now caring for myself means that some of that is too emotionally triggering, and until I can resolve that, it's not a healthy environment for me to keep like putting myself back into, at least not too frequently, and not without things like supportive resources.
Well, you've jumped into another realm and, taking care of anxiety.
Yeah, this is totally new for me. But like, I mean, I was telling you, my Apple Watch has been tracking my resting heart rate.
Yeah.
And over the last month, it said, hey, your resting heart rate has changed. And I was like, tap the notification. What does that mean? And it's like, your resting heart rate has lowered, and it's like gone down almost 10 points in just a month. And the only main difference that I've done in my nervous system kind of care has been that I've literally had these on as often as possible, as often as they'll hold a charge, either in my I'm gonna be really weird. I put them in my bra, I'm not gonna lie, because I just need the bilateral stimulation somewhere on both sides of my body.
I put them in my pockets,
or I put them in my pockets. Yeah, like somewhere
absolutely.
else, like that I don't have to carry them in my hand, but I do like to carry them if I can.
So tumors can produce catecholamines, and contained in catecholamines is adrenaline, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and that can make somebody feel anxious.
Yeah.
And some people don't break down those catecholamines easily, and so it can kind of
I'm definitely way more predisposed as a person. Like, I mean, arguably, like genetically, I'm a little more predisposed to mental illness, to anxiety, all those different things. And so, that's been an ongoing thing to learn, how do I cope with this, especially when the source of my anxiety is continuing to kind of show up. In various different ways. But like, I'll be totally honest with you.
Various different ways?
Well, like it's not like I can't just long-term forget that I have cancer, because I've got appointments every 3 months. I've got blood work. I've got a treatment coming up. Like there's certain things that do kind of come in, and they're just there in my face, and I have to be there and be present with it. But then I can also say that, like, I feel like there's times that sometimes I go through the day and I don't sit here and go like, oh my gosh, there's tumors growing in my liver. Like, what am I going to do? That's so scary.
You're able to live.
I'm able to live. But the only reason that I'm able to do that is because I spend some time, I'll say, in the pit of despair when this news is new, right? When it's fresh. But I think that my appointment with you, where I like first held these and we talked a little about PTSD, and we kind of reflected on this whole last year between liver surgery, histotrypsy, and now we're here and we've got more to deal with in the liver. And it was like, hold up, like what's going on? And so, I mentioned that waiting period that I was kind of forced into at my initial diagnosis. And even though it wasn't fun initially for my doctor to say, hey, yeah, like the first time we could do this next liver treatment is going to be in about 6 weeks. That initially felt like, excuse me, like we can't wait that long.
Yeah.
And then I sat with it for like maybe a couple days, and I kind of settled into that. And then it was like, you know what? Maybe it's actually a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing that I get to wait, and it's a gift to wait. Like, it's not this bad, horrible thing that's going to mean that cancer's going to grow. Like that's 6 weeks that I have to work on regulating my nervous system, to like develop a sense of calm and to regain my sense of control. And that's an active process. That's work, but it is work that I feel like has been largely worth it, because I went from having severe neck pain, like when I would talk, like I had stress-induced pain in my neck, and I don't have that. Like, I've been talking to you for what, like an hour almost, and I haven't had neck pain come up once.
Wow.
And that I attribute partially to these. And I did a very specific hypnotherapy session just like 2 days after I met with you. And I feel like that there's just things that have been falling into place or falling in front of me that I have just decided, it fell in front of me, I'm going to pick it up. Instead of with, like, it's really been this idea of like trusting.
You were not in that pit of despair.
Yeah, I got out of the pit of despair. I had to kind of claw my way out in some ways. And didn't do it without help. And I will say that, like, I think help is important, whether it's support from other people or resources.
I was going to ask you what your support system is and is like.
So I feel like really fortunate because I live in an area that not only do I have an oncologist who's a specialist in my unique disease, right? And he's literally across the street from your office.
Right there.
But I also lucked out in that I was connected with you, who, again, you're here,
Thank
you're
you.
30 minutes from my house. And then on top of that, like most of my family, like my immediate family, my siblings, I have a sister that lives 5 minutes down the road from me. My mom and my dad live here. And like, so I have a significant amount of support. I also have a large online community of just people who all they want to do anytime something happens is they're like, how can I help? And sometimes that can be overwhelming, right? To have that level of an audience. And I will say that I think it's healthy to detach from that sometimes, especially when you're dealing with a lot. But it has been hugely helpful to have those layers of support. In addition to that, though, there's support that I have fought for, to have myself, like seeing a therapist, trying different types of therapy. And I would say also, like, one of the supports that I have, in addition to psychological help and psychiatry, like, because that's been something I've leaned into since January of this year, is like, okay, maybe I've been doing this without any level of medicative support, and maybe it's okay if I need some medicine right now to just get through right now. And
medicine's great when you need it.
Yeah, like it's been helpful. Like I feel like I went from I can't function to like, that I don't feel motivated to get up in the morning and work out. I don't feel excited about the day. Arguably, I do think I have, seasonal affective disorder, and that's a whole other thing. But
well, we're going into a heavy season right now.
I know, it's going to be nice and warm, but I love the sun and I love the summers because I get to spend time with my kids like every single day. We go to the pool and they swim, and I watch them swim and do swim team, which I did swim team as a kid, so it's really fun to see my kids get excited about their sports and to be there, be present. Like I feel like I almost like, I don't want to say I live for summer, but I really thrive in the summer. Even though it's so hot. Like I hate that it's so hot.
I think there are ways to cope with the Arizona or the Scottsdale summer. Sure. And for me, it's exercising outside, and then you acclimate, and then it's not as hot. That is a great support community. And sometimes, like you said.
I said, I feel like really lucky in some ways, because I know that this isn't the case for everyone. Yeah. I know that cancer can be a really isolating thing. Even with my huge supportive community, sometimes it does feel really isolating. But
how is it when you go to bed at night?
It kind of depends. Like right now, it's fine. Like right now, I go to bed and I don't feel like I'm spiraling all night when I go to bed. But like early April, I got scans at the beginning of April, had news by the end of that day. I couldn't sleep for like probably a solid week. Like, I mean, I could sleep, but going to sleep was really hard. And I had to rely on some really hefty, anxiety medication to just knock me out. Yeah. And that was hard. Like that was challenging because I know how much sleep is helpful to the whole body.
Absolutely. It was challenging to not be able to sleep, or challenging to have to submit for the medicines?
Yeah, it was also, it was challenging to be in a space to, admit that I needed some level of help, even though I've done it before, right? I think that the hard thing is that I've spent all of this time engaging with the naturopathic remedies, nutraceuticals, lifestyle. I do all these things that are so supportive to my body, but to just acknowledge that, okay, the things I have gone through as a person need to be supported differently right now. And that's not a bad thing. That's not something to be ashamed of. It just is what it is for the moment. And it doesn't mean that I'll be here forever.
Let's talk about this in a year.
Yeah.
Let's do this again in a year. And when your liver is free, you're about to go through a very new treatment.
Something cool and unique and cutting edge that will just be the problem solver.
And we'll tell everybody about it. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
You are really and truly embodying resilience and cancer, and most of all about being human, and that's what this podcast is about, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you for joining us on Rubin on Point, a podcast about cancer, resilience, and most of all, about being human. I hope today's conversation inspired you to see new possibilities for growth, healing, and strength in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little extra resilience in their day. Remember, no matter what challenges you're facing, resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about building a life of purpose, connection, and vitality. Until next time, stay strong, stay healthy, and take care of yourself and those around you.